Within the novel Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, an English woman born on December 16, 1775, many different social injustice and political issues take place, as many of her work displays. The book Pride and Prejudice takes place in rural England during the 19th century. The characters were living in a male-dominated society. Women in the novel, the Bennet girls, were often faced with unfairness, not being able to make decisions without a male figure. The gender roles in this novel are prevalent in what is the main theme of this book, marriage. One of the sisters, Elizabeth, is seen rejecting a marriage proposal, where then her mother gets furiated as she knows that is the only way a woman can move up in society during this time. The gender roles shown throughout this novel can connect to other social injustice such as money and class ranking. Those who are poor were highly looked down upon. Mr. Bennet even expressed how he did not have enough money for his daughters to marry rich enough, which would help their family status. So the author of this journal, Jane Austen, has published 6 novels during her time. Many of her novels include the themes gender issues, marriage, and social class. Her writings let us see perspectives of British society norms. In Pride and Prejudice, we see how the rich and poor are treated in the other aspects of society. The Bennet family was not rich, which is why the parents are trying to push their 5 daughters to marry rich. This novel shows the breaking down of Mr. Darcy's pride and Elizabeth Bennet's prejudice. Mr. Darcy's pride came from his class ranking and his riches, whereas Elizabeth highly disliked Mr. Darcy at first and describes him as arrogant. These two end up married in the end. The roles of men and women during Austen's time were as the girls of the upper and middle class go to school, not so much to be educated, but to seem more as accomplished. Women also had limited education, as things such as private school or tutors were not available to them. When a woman in this time is not married, it leaves for them to be dependent on male relatives, and if those male relatives die, they end up left poor and without homes. An unmarried woman during this time can be harmed if living alone, and depending on who you marry, it can make or break your reputation. The character Lydia, for example, who ran away outside Wickham without being married, ruined her reputation. However, by getting married saves her from being shunned by relatives and her social circle. To the men, marriage is also seen as what women want. Mr. Darcy said, "A lady's imagination is very rapid. It jumps from admiration to love for matrimony in a minute." The mother of the girl said, "Mr. Bennet, you are wanted immediately. We're all in an uproar. You must come to make Lizzie marry Mr. Collins, for she will not marry him," implying that Elizabeth, who rejected Mr. Collins' marriage proposal, should not have a say in who she marries, furthering the point that women during this time were seen as weak, submissive, and many were forced into marriage. Jane Austen, within her novel, wants readers to put themselves in the shoes of their characters so we can relate to their feelings. She uses strong imagery to get us to feel the atmosphere and mood of each scene. For example, when entering the woods, forests, and rivers, she's very descriptive to let us know, almost feel the nature around the characters, such as the gardens of the larger houses. She emphasizes the sense of power that men hold, like when entering Mr. Bingley's larger home. It is a sign of power, not just because of his riches, but also his masculine power. Jane Austen is trying to let readers understand how she feels with these gender roles through her characters as well. For example, the sisters Jane and Elizabeth both have different personalities, where Elizabeth is more sensible, smart, and straightforward, whereas Jane is reserved and more gentle sister. Because of those characteristics, Elizabeth is seen as less ladylike in the novel, where she can have, Lady Catherine is introduced as rich, independent, and a snobby widow who is in the rare situation where she can have power, but only through money. When Elizabeth enters the character Lady Catherine's home, they both look out the window and admire the view, not like the men would do, symbolizing that women have time to appreciate nature's beauty. When Elizabeth visits Mr. Darcy's mansion, it is described by Austen as it was a large, handsome stone building standing well on rising ground, and in front was a stream of natural importance swelling into greater without any artificial periods. When describing the home, it seems as though she could be describing Mr. Darcy's characteristics as well, in this case implying that men are strong being compared to rocks and stone. Another example of women's different personalities and morals would be the character Charlotte accepting marriage proposal from Mr. Collins, even though she's not in love with him, just so she's not left unmarried, showing how submissive she is. When comparing her and Elizabeth, who are good friends in the book, you can see how they view themselves and their worth when Elizabeth declines Mr. Collins' proposal because she does not love him, and Charlotte later on accepts it, despite how she feels inside. Jane Austen uses the main character, Elizabeth, as someone to not follow the stereotypes of a woman's role, but also uses her love for nature to represent her strength and calmness. Overall, when Jane Austen provides in the novel are the societal norms of the 19th century England, where it is a man's job to marry a woman within the same status and keep up his family name status. However, seeing the relationship between Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth, where Elizabeth is of a lower class than Darcy, and he is going against his family wishes, but is happy in the end. This proves to the readers that Austen is trying to tell us that rebelling from the norms can lead to happiness, and going against the norms can lead to society successfully moving forward. Because of how locked down women were at this time, they had no choice but to experiment and rebel, which was the reality.